Hello, welcome to Legal Talk, brought to you by the law offices of O'Donnell, Weiss, and Megay, your life, your business, your law firm. We're in Pottstown at 41 High Street, where we've been since 1955. We're also in Phoenixville at 347 Bridge Street, where we've been since 2013. So please contact us. Oh, one more thing, we're at www.owmlaw.com. My name's Dave Megay, and I'm one of the attorneys here, and I'm joined by Melissa Iacobucci. Melissa, thanks for helping me with this segment.
Sure, Dave.
Guys, today we're going to talk about prenuptial agreement, for a couple of minutes. Melissa does pretty much nothing but family law work, custody, divorce, support, child support, spousal support, alimony. What am I missing? Family law topics. I think that.
Protection from abuse.
Oh, protection from abuse issues, etc. And one of the issues and projects that we frequently do is represent clients with prenuptial agreements. And you might be thinking, this just popped in my head, Melissa. What?
You mean you're going to say what I'm going to say?
Yeah, that you need a prenuptial agreement.
Even if you're not rich.
That's exactly right. So we're on the same wavelength. Because I get that a lot with clients. You get that a lot with clients. I don't need prenuptial agreement. I have a house and I'm marrying somebody, big deal. But prenuptial agreements aren't hard. The discussion with your soon-to-be spouse can be uncomfortable, but the principles that Melissa and I will walk you through, I quite frankly think are fairly easy to get through. I know, Melissa, back in the day, and I'm quite a bit older than you, back in the day I remember that prenuptial agreements were enforceable based upon whether the court thought that they were fair. Mm-hmm. So you and I could get married, we could have a prenuptial agreement. After the marriage, if our marriage dissolved, I could try to break that prenuptial agreement, arguing that what we agreed upon wasn't fair. I don't know if that was before your time.
Yes.
But I remember the seminal case, I want to say 1980, maybe 1987, where I believe it was the Pennsylvania Supreme Court, got rid of the fairness doctrine. Mm-hmm. Now the principle is those prenuptial agreements are enforceable so long as you make a
full disclosure.
Yeah, a full disclosure of all your assets. So if I have 3 accounts and you have 2, I have a house and you have a house, we need to disclose those assets. If I don't tell you about the 3rd account that I had, arguably later on after we're married, you find out about it, you can break the prenup. Mm-hmm. It's kind of that simple. And it makes sense because if I don't make a full and fair disclosure of all my assets, I'm committing a fraud, in effect, upon you. But what I thought was interesting, and it's an interesting topic, or an interesting point, I think so, is that the contracts, the prenuptial agreements, are contracts that are evaluated no different than, frankly, your cell phone contract or the lease that I have on my car. So long as the terms are fully and fairly disclosed, it's enforceable. Mm-hmm. And that's, I think, how it should be treated, in my humble opinion. Now let's talk about disclosing assets. How do you make a full and fair disclosure of the assets? What do you do? Do you have exhibits? Do you get exact values of assets, real estate, etc.?
I think it's a combination of what you just said. It's an exhibit where you'll put a list of your assets and then the values. Accounts are easy to have a value. There's an account statement which clearly has the value. Property is a little bit different.
You mean real estate?
Real estate is a little bit different, but so usually a rough estimate will suffice.
Right. Do you have to get a real estate appraisal done?
No, you don't have to, but I suppose if the other side wanted you to, you could do it.
Right. Another way to do it if you don't get a real estate appraisal that you and I have seen is just disclose the property, the tax parcel number, and what it's valued for tax purposes, which is a public record. Just go on the county website and figure out what your property is valued for property tax purposes.
Yes.
Okay. Now, with a prenuptial agreement, I know that we have the term separate property and then the term marital property. That prenuptial agreement will define what's separate property, and isn't that what you and I are bringing into the marriage as far as the accounts that we have and the real estate that we have?
It includes everything you had before the marriage,
Okay.
but usually in a prenup, what they'll separate property will also include everything acquired during the marriage that you keep in your separate name.
Interesting. Okay. And then what is the term marital property defined as?
Anything you define it as, which is usually jointly titled property.
Okay. So you and I get married today. You bring in 3 accounts and a house. I bring 2 accounts and a vacation property. We need to negotiate what happens to those items of separate property. We're valuing them as of the date of marriage, but what about the increase in value of those items? Do we negotiate whether the increase is marital or separate?
Yeah, that could be negotiated for sure.
Okay. And then, so I bring a house in worth $10 into the marriage. We divorce 10 years from now and it's worth $15. We need to negotiate today before we get married what happens to that increase in value.
That $5 increase.
Right. Okay. What about the assets we acquired during the marriage? Take me back. You said that there's either going to be those assets that are jointly titled during the marriage, or even those assets that aren't jointly titled during the marriage.
Right. An easy way, or a way to keep it easy, is to keep those go by title. Those assets that are just in your name alone would remain your property if divorce were to happen.
During the marriage.
During the marriage.
And I like that, guys, because what that's doing is giving the 2 spouses control. So if during our marriage you and I go to buy a vacation property, but I'm using all of the inheritance that I received from my great uncle who died, if I want to keep that separate, I'm going to buy that vacation property in my name only.
Yes.
And if you're not happy about it, then we have to discuss that.
Right.
That's something that you and I have to talk about. So that is an easy approach. On the other hand, if we want to buy that vacation property using assets or income that we have and acquired, during our marriage, we would put that in joint names.
Right. And then the question becomes, how is that divided?
That's the next point of a prenuptial agreement. And we would negotiate before the agreement, if we divorce, what percentage the marital property will be allocated. 50-50, 60-40, whatever the number is?
Yes.
Okay. We only have a minute or 2 yet.
Okay.
Melissa, what's the other item that we deal with in a prenuptial agreement?
Alimony.
Starts with an A, right? Alimony, right? And that's something that folks, you need to discuss with your spouse. What would happen if we divorce? Do I have all the earning capacity? Do you have all the earning capacity? Do either one of us have an expectation of spousal support, etc.? We only have 2 minutes. Matt's telling me. Go ahead.
Okay. Well,
I want to throw something else
because
out
I thought there was 1 minute, so I'm just going to say one more thing. About the communication aspect between spouses. If you want to do this, I urge you to talk to an attorney well before the wedding. Do not let it be a last minute, week before the wedding sort of move. Come months before so that you have a chance to review everything, and then it gives your spouse an opportunity to have the agreement reviewed.
Right, and each party should have their own attorney is where I was going.
Yes.
Each party, you don't have to have your own attorney. One party could have an attorney, and that attorney, he or she, could be the laboring oar in getting everything done, but it's got to be absolutely very clear that each party has had the opportunity to get their attorney, and if one decides not to proceed, that's with an attorney, that's fine, but he or she needs to know that the attorney only represents one party. Because I can't sit here as your attorney and tell you how it goes and then say, Melissa, hold your ears and I'm going to talk to your soon-to-be spouse.
No.
So that's how it works. But Melissa's point is a great one. Don't wait to the last minute. Okay, Melissa, that's very, very good. Thank you. All about prenuptial agreements, folks. OWM Law should be the one you call. Speak with Melissa about prenuptial agreements weeks, months before your wedding. So You've been watching OWM Law Legal Talk. We're at www.owmlaw.com, 610-323-2800 in Pottstown, 610-917-9347 in Phoenixville. Thanks.